Hello, hello. Welcome to Healthy Perspectives, a podcast that takes on current cultural and social issues through a clinical lens. All right. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, we appreciate your time. And I want to address some stuff today that, look, I've been getting feedback lately. Well, let's just be real. And some of that feedback has been really good. Some of it not so good. Look, I know it's also super easy to get focused on the negative feedback, but there are times where when you get feedback, you should pay attention to that feedback. In particular, depending on where it comes from, what the motivation is. I'm going to get into all of that too. But the feedback I've been getting is, there are times where you just sound really angry. And when I got that feedback, the first thing I did was take a step back and say, am I angry? Right? I had to do that. I know anger, the emotion of anger, intimately. I know it from personal experience in the past. Now, I, for one, don't get super angry very often. It's actually really unusual for me. It's not that I can't. I just tend to deal with my emotions at a level before that. But I have also dealt with anger intimately as a provider, as a mental health provider. And so when I got that feedback, I had to take a look. I had to ask myself some hard questions. And let me tell you what's going on here. One, I'm going to start with, I got feedback. Is it accurate? Not necessarily, not in this situation. But is it inaccurate? Well, again, not necessarily. So I want to tell you what's actually going on. I am a super passionate person. Those of you who follow the podcast, those of you who know me personally, you know that I am passionate. That doesn't mean that I'm soft and gentle. It doesn't mean that I'm really hard and crude or anything like that. But you should know that I'm passionate. And so I'm going to be intense at times. And why am I telling you this? Because this most recent piece of feedback that I've been processing, I can tell you what's been going on for me. I've been growing frustrated. I don't think that I'm angry. I don't think it's crossed that threshold by any stretch of the imagination. But I've been using this forum, this podcasting forum, as a way of expressing some things about my frustration. And that's important for me to look at because, look, I'm about healthy perspectives. And if I lose healthy perspective, if I don't stay focused on the clinical work, then what am I actually providing to you? And so, look, I am most frustrated with ignorance. I'm not going to lie. That for whatever reason, for me, that's the one that percolates to the top. My own in particular, and others also. I do not like to be ignorant. I do not like it when other people are ignorant. It drives me batty. And so my frustrations rise. And if I don't pay attention to them, I will become angry. Ignorance drives me crazy. And in our world today, there is so much ignorance. If I wanted to get caught up in all of the ignorance, I could just be angry every single day. And that's not what's happening here. So I thought I owed you that explanation. My podcast isn't supposed to be an angry podcast. I don't want it to be that. I know that my intensity does come across that way a little bit at times, but that's the irritation and frustration. I've also, in this process, just explored the possibility that I'm leaning a little bit too heavily in some of those intersections where, like say, politics overruns with the clinical work. because I do a fair amount of cultural content, and a fair amount of that cultural content, not all of it by any stretch of the imagination, but a good chunk of it does come out of the political arena. And so I'm taking a look at that as well. So after doing some of that initial, I got to tell you, I'm just going to go over my process with you. I'm going to give it to you because it's a good process. It will, one, it's been helping me, but two, it can help you. So in the next few minutes, if you stick with me, you're going to have a great process that could, with my own personal example as a therapist who teaches this stuff and still messes it up sometimes. Like, I don't want to suck at my job. If you followed me for any length of time, sucking at my job is definitely the last. People who suck at their job, they don't belong in their job. And so I'm gonna walk you through this process, and we have to do this sometimes. We're allowed to make mistakes, but we got to make the corrections also. All right. So what did I do? Number one, I accepted the feedback as possibly true. If you're getting feedback, whether it comes from a crappy place or a great place, in a good way or a terrible way, it's information. And so you ought to, first and foremost, say, is this true? And you got to be open to the possibility that it might be right. Because in this process, you're going to see I learned some things that I needed to pay attention to. All right. Now, am I angry? I'm not actually angry. Right. You're getting snippets of this in a podcast. I mean, in my day-to-day, I'm really not angry. My irritation, my frustration comes through. But it's when we ask the right first question, which is this true? We're starting from the perfect spot to discover a whole bunch of things that we probably need to pay attention to. So feedback, first of all, is information, not always accurate information. Inaccurate feedback is still good information. When somebody tells us something and we play it all out and we figure it out and it's not accurate, we still learn stuff. Maybe not so much about us, but maybe about the person or the group or whoever's giving us that feedback. So it's still good information. Okay. It is my job. It is your job to be curious enough to ask if it fits. That's our role. That's our responsibility. So that's what I've been doing. Number two, the second thing I've been doing is I know in my heart that I'm not angry. So that doesn't fit. So I ask the next set of questions, which really is only a couple of things. All right. Number one, it's an internal question. How's my communication? Because if I'm not actually angry, but I'm coming across as though I might be angry. Now, I went back and I looked at some of the stuff that was pointed to. And if I'm being completely transparent, I can see how it could be perceived as angry. My paraverbals are really intense. And that sometimes, for a lot of people in our culture, is viewed as anger. And so I have to take a closer look at my paraverbals. That's the tone, volume, and the cadence, right? I want to make sure that I'm projecting in the tone, volume, and cadence what my heart says on the inside, right? I don't want to project more intensely than is necessary, but I also don't want to project less intensely than I experience it inside my heart. So that's the first one. It's an internal reflective process. The second part is an external reflective process. And again, remember, that's only because I have determined that this doesn't actually fit and I'm not actually angry. And the second part is the source of this information usually accurate, have an agenda, trying to accomplish something that I need to be aware of? Is there something going on in their world? Now, that point of curiosity is really, really important. If I am truly open and curious about the feedback, and I can conclude that the feedback isn't totally accurate, although the internal reflection says I can understand why it might be perceived that way in part. But the second part is I could learn something about somebody who cared enough to give me feedback. Or sometimes people despise us enough to give us feedback. I'll identify that right there. If they just hate me, I mean, truth is, there are people that just don't like me. I get it. I'm not going to be everybody's favorite, nor do I want to be everybody's favorite. I mean, I want to be loved by everybody. I understand not everybody is capable of loving me. I also want to love everybody. And there are people that are really challenging for me to love. But I can learn a lot about another person if I'm truly staying open and curious. So that's what I did. I went through those two steps. I accepted the possibility that the feedback might be accurate. When I discovered that it did not fit, then I went into, okay, am I projecting in a way that's not good and healthy? Or is there something going on in the life of that person or group or whatever that's giving me the feedback? And what I discovered was incredibly helpful information. So, following along with me, if we're looking at, am I angry? Number one, my communication isn't as clear and accurate as I think it should be. Sometimes in my intensity, I'm not communicating the message, the deep down, heartfelt message that I want to communicate as well as I should. And so I got to do better. I want you all out there to know that I care, that I care not just a little bit, but I deeply care. Because the truth is, I don't make money doing this podcast. Not yet, maybe someday. For right now, I'm not doing it to make the money. When that day comes, then I'm going to be thrilled. I'm going to be so stoked. Like if you all go in and you donate money to me today, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Why? Because that's a big deal. When what we're doing matters enough to people that they say, I'm willing to put a little bit of my time, energy, or resources into this. So I love it when I get guests. I love it when people donate. I like all of those things are great. That's not why I do this. I do this because I love and I care about people getting things as healthy as they can in their world. That's it. That's like the bottom of the bottom line. That's what matters to me. Second thing in the, what I just have discovered so far is my paraverbals are really intense. And when I went back and I looked at some of them, oh my gosh, folks, I know, it can be tough sometimes. I know it also can be really valuable to have that kind of intensity at times. So, my love for others may not be coming through as much as I want because my paraverbals are so loud and intense and like, bam, in your face kind of stuff. And so I want to be easy to hear without losing the passion. That's a tough line to walk. If you don't think so, come on my podcast. Let's give it a shot. Like I'm down, but it is a tough line to walk for me, at least. It's a tough line to walk. The third thing, in telling my stories, in telling my experience, I have to be more careful of others. I have to, I have the right, of course, to tell my story as it is. It's my story. And I truly deep down believe it's good practice to make sure I'm not intentionally hurting others. That's why I decided to do this whole review. That's why I decided to do this whole review live or in recording with you. That's why I'm doing this. Because I don't want to hurt people. And I definitely don't want to hurt people on purpose. I prefer not to hurt people ever, even on accident. So, though this is never my intent to hurt people, I can acknowledge that my actions, sometimes even my inactions, have caused people pain. Is it my fault? Not necessarily. It doesn't mean I shouldn't pay attention to it. And if I can do better, I should do better. So I'll keep looking at that, and I'll keep paying attention to that. Okay. That's the three from the internal that I've done. The external, I learned that some people, even people who care deeply about me, can be sensitive to the way that I project into the world. Now, this is not something new to me, unfortunately. It's it is though a good reminder to be mindful of others and their experience of me. And I should also work toward a better balance of my passion and gentle projection. And I can definitely do that. I have times, I go through periods of time where I do better than other times. And then I get sort of metaphorically smacked, with some, look, you're not being gentle enough. You're not being gentle enough. And sometimes gentle isn't called for. And sometimes it is. Love is always called for. So side note here, I occasionally just need this reminder. I hate it. I wish that I didn't need this reminder. I wish that in learning the lesson, because there's some lessons in this world, folks, we learn and then we relearn and then we relearn. And my passion and gentleness have always been a friction point. Used to be much worse than it is now. It used to happen much more often than it does now, but it still does percolate over time, and my passion can kind of cause people to think that maybe I just don't care or that I'm angry and stuff like that a little more often than they should. Not telling them what they have to do. I'm telling that's my stuff. That being said, others outside of me, if they truly took the time to know me, understand me, to ask questions, to be curious, I'm telling you, my love is what shines through. I've heard that so many times, and I want that to be the case in my podcast too. And at times it does. I can look back at some of the stuff that I've done, and I can clearly see the love shining through. And so can others. They've told me. But sometimes not so much. I want it to shine through all the time. So let me give you my conclusion. I gave you my whole process. What I did was I went through the anger, which I described as a secondary emotion. I didn't get into the whole lesson about it. I talked about the feedback process in depth and the learning that occurs within the feedback process. Okay, these are things that I did. What I learned is I need to pay better attention to my topics and my paraverbals. I am not angry. I learned that I'm not angry. I went back and I looked and I said, you know what? That's frustration. That's passion. That's not anger. Now, I also saw how it could be perceived as anger. And so I'm going to work to take the edge off of that so that it's not misunderstood in the future when I'm not angry. And then the third thing is, I know I'm not the only one who struggles with this. So my final takeaway for you is this: feedback is good. Hard feedback is good. Feedback from somebody who loves you is good. Feedback from somebody who doesn't love you is good. Feedback is good. You can follow the template that I gave you here. You will benefit from it. I just demonstrated to you the process. The only part that I can't demonstrate to you right here, right now, is the shift. Although it is possible that if you put this side by side with some of my other podcasts, you might see similar passion, but a more gentle edge. If I did that today in this podcast, I knocked it out of the park. You got to see the process and you got to see an example of the shift that a person can make to be better, to do better, to love more. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope this is helpful. I hope you understood this process clearly. And I hope you have a great day. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. We appreciate our audience a lot, so we give you some simple ways to track us down. Please like, subscribe, and follow all the podcasts on different platforms, but you can also email us at healthyperspectives@protonmail.com, or you can check out our website at healthy-perspectives.com/podcast. It's a backward slash. So if you want to go to our landing page, if you go to healthy-perspectives.com, you'll still find us. You just got to click on the podcast button. Thank you so much.